Imagine this extreme discipline makes you unrecognizable. That's not just motivation talk, it's exactly what the legendary samurai Musashi achieved. He wasn't just a warrior, he became one of history's greatest philosopher fighters. His teachings are preserved in the Book of Five Rings, a guide that reveals how ordinary people can transform themselves into unstoppable forces of discipline. The first lesson begins with the Earth Ring, and it's all about brutal self-assessment. Most of us think we're busy, but let's be honest, we're not busy, we're distracted. Musashi himself wrote, "The warrior's way is the twofold way of pen and sword." He meant you must train both the body and the mind, but before you can do that, you need to know where you truly stand. Think about this: after defeating Sasaki Kojiro in his most famous duel, Musashi didn't celebrate. He didn't bask in his victory. Instead, he disappeared into a cave for 2 years, not to show off, but to study his own weaknesses. The man who had just won still asked himself, "Why did I almost lose?" That's Earthring thinking. Now let's bring this into today's world. Picture someone, we'll call him Gohan. He wakes up tired, checks his phone, first thing scrolls emails in bed and convinces himself he's starting the day productive. At work, he opens 15 tabs, switches tasks constantly, and spends his lunch break drowning in YouTube videos. By 7 p.m., he's exhausted, swearing he worked hard, but deep down nothing meaningful got done. Sound familiar? Here's what happened when Gohan tracked his time for 1 week, minute by minute. 6 hours a day wasted on his phone. 2 hours of real focused work. 8 hours of fake busyness that produced nothing. That's the Earthring principle in action. Know both the smallest details and the bigger picture. The truth hit Gohan like a punch. He didn't have a time problem. He had a focus problem. He wasn't fighting against a lack of hours. He was addicted to distractions. And this is where so many of us live. Studies show that the average adult only has about 2 to 3 genuinely productive hours a day. The rest fake work, avoidance, and distractions dressed up as effort. No wonder motivation alone never works. You can't motivate yourself out of a lie. That's why Musashi's first ring is honesty. You've got to track everything and confront the ugly truth, because reality doesn't care about your excuses. Musashi himself wrote, "Accept everything just the way it is, not the way you wish it was." And once Gohan faced the numbers, something shifted. It wasn't because he suddenly worked harder, it was because he could never unsee the truth again. 6 hours on his phone, 2 hours of real work. Those numbers burned into his brain and they forced him to change. But here's the twist: knowing you're weak is only the first step. What happens when you actually try to change? That's where the next stage, the watering, comes in. By week 2, Gohan thought his new habits were pathetic. 10 push-ups here, 20 minutes of focus there. But then he looked back and realized something powerful. He had completed 70 push-ups and nearly 3 hours of focused work without missing a single day. That's the watering in action. Learning to flow around obstacles instead of smashing headfirst into them. Think about it: can't do 100 push-ups. Do 10, struggling to finish a chapter. Read 1 page. Can't sit still for a 20-minute meditation. Sit for 2 minutes. Most people believe they're different, that they can skip the basics. But even Musashi, the undefeated samurai, started with wooden swords, practicing the simplest strikes for years before his first real duel. And here's the genius in his strategy. Musashi once wrote, "In strategy, make the enemy think you are far away when you are near." Applied to discipline, this means tricking your own mind. Let the task think it's defeating you, while in reality you're winning in small, consistent steps. Your brain expects you to quit at the gym after 10 minutes, so go for 11. It expects you to stop after page 1, so read page 2. Each tiny victory rewires your identity. You're no longer someone who gives up, you're someone who doesn't quit. That's the secret Gohan discovered. Discipline isn't about heroic efforts. It's not about overhauling your life overnight. It's about consistent adaptation. When 10 push-ups became easy, he moved to 15. When 25 minutes of focus felt short, he stretched to 30. Just like water slowly carving through stone, persistence always beats brute force. By week 4, Gohan was waking up at 5 a.m. naturally exercising for 45 minutes every day and logging 4 hours of deep focused work. Not because he forced himself, but because he flowed toward it like water finding its path. But here's where it gets dangerous. Once you start building momentum, once progress becomes visible, a new and deadlier enemy appears. Not outside of you, but inside. An enemy that has destroyed more warriors than any opponent on the battlefield. This is where the firing begins. Gohan was making progress. He felt strong. Then he looked around and saw others benching twice his weight. People younger than him closing million-dollar deals. Friends training for marathons while he was proud of his morning push-ups. And suddenly that fire turned inward. I'm pathetic, he thought. What's the point? One missed workout turned into 2, then 3. The spiral had begun. But Musashi understood the fire. In the Book of 5 Rings, he wrote about fire's nature, how it spreads, consumes, and transforms. Most people let anger consume them, but warriors. They use it to forge themselves. When Musashi's father died, he was only 7. That anger could have broken him. Instead, he turned it into fuel training 14 hours a day, not despite his fury, but because of it. Every swing of his wooden sword burned with rage, but the key was where he aimed it at his weakness, never at himself. In Dokudo, he wrote, "Do not be jealous of others, good or evil." Not because jealousy is wrong, but because it wastes precious fuel. Every second spent envying someone else is energy stolen from destroying your own mediocrity. That's the principle of the firing anger. At mediocrity is fuel, not failure, and this was Gohan's turning point. One night, staring at himself in the mirror, disgusted, he almost whispered, "I'm pathetic." But then he stopped. Same anger, new direction. I refuse to stay pathetic. That inner voice telling you you're not good enough. That's not your enemy, it's your drill sergeant. The problem isn't the voice. The problem is that you've been attacking yourself instead of attacking your weaknesses. So here's what Gohan did. Every night he wrote down what pissed him off about his day. Only 30 push-ups. Checked my phone during deep work, ate junk for lunch, and then he turned each frustration into a mission for tomorrow. 30 push-ups today. Tomorrow's minimum is 35. Phone distracted him. Tomorrow it stays in another room. Junk food at lunch, tomorrow's meal gets prepped tonight. That's how warriors think. Not with empty affirmations, but with productive rage anger aimed at the problem, not at the self. And when you harness the fire ring, you stop wasting energy on jealousy or self-doubt. You use every spark to forge yourself stronger. Emotions themselves aren't good or bad, they're just energy. The real question is, where do you aim them? When you turn anger inward, you self-destruct. But when you direct that same fire at your weaknesses, you evolve. That's what Gohan finally discovered. He built a daily ritual around it. Each morning he would acknowledge what he hated about his current state. Each evening he turned that frustration into tomorrow's plan. Not fake positivity, not shallow affirmations, just pure productive rage. And within 2 weeks his progress doubled. Not because he suddenly found motivation, but because he stopped wasting anger on tearing himself down and started using it as fuel for growth. The fury was always inside him. Now it finally had a purpose. But anger brings another trap, the one that has destroyed more warriors than any opponent with a sword. What happens when that rage actually works? When you start winning? When progress convinces you that you're superior? 3 months in, Gohan was almost unrecognizable. He woke up at 4:30 a.m. without an alarm, knocked out 100 push-ups like it was nothing, logged 4 hours of deep work every single day. His friends couldn't believe the transformation. His family whispered he might have joined some kind of cult. And then came the most dangerous whisper of all: you've made it. You're disciplined now. You can ease up. So he did. He stopped tracking his time, skipped his evening planning, told himself, I've got this. And slowly, one missed workout became 3. 4-hour work sessions shrank to 2. Within just 2 weeks, half of his progress was gone. This is exactly why Musashi wrote about the wind ring. In his book, he described other schools of strategy. People thought he was boasting. He wasn't. He was explaining why he never stopped learning even after 30 consecutive victories. At age 50, undefeated against every sword school in Japan, Musashi still declared, "I have not yet reached the way." Think about that. 50 victories, undefeated, still calling himself a student. Why? Because the true enemy isn't other people. The enemy is the version of yourself that believes you've arrived. That's why Musashi studied other schools obsessively, not to steal their techniques, but to stay humble. Every time he thought he knew everything, he found another approach that exposed his blind spots. That humility kept him sharp while others grew soft. Gohan learned this lesson the hard way. The moment he stopped tracking, he started falling. Not because tracking itself has magic power, but because tracking keeps you honest. The second you think you don't need your systems anymore, you've already lost. Here's the painful contrast. Musashi with 60 victories says, "I am still a student." And you? At just 60 days, you whisper, "I've got this." He stayed hungry for decades. Most of us get comfortable in weeks. That's the lesson of the wind ring. Every level of discipline has its own trap. Beginners struggle to start. Intermediates struggle to stay consistent. But the advanced, their greatest battle is believing they're advanced at all. So Gohan built a new rule. Every month he sought out someone more disciplined than him, someone whose habits made his look weak. He studied their methods, felt inadequate again, and used that discomfort as a compass, pointing him toward growth. That's why Musashi wrote about other schools, not to mock them, but to remind himself that he was only one of many, to stay curious, to remain a student, and to never let mastery become arrogance. But here's the hardest part. Knowing you must stay humble and actually staying humble while you're winning, those are two very different things. And that's where the final teaching begins, the one most people never reach, the void ring. Because after months of discipline, Gohan hit a wall, not a physical one, but an existential one. He realized a truth that almost broke him: this never gets easier. He would wake at 4 a.m. forever, track his time forever, fight his weaknesses forever. And the thought made him sick. When does it end? When do I finally just be disciplined? The answer: never. That's what the void ring teaches. Musashi's writings say, accept everything just the way it is. Not accept defeat, accept reality. And reality is this: discipline is war, and war never ends. But here's the paradox. Inside the void, struggle becomes natural. Hardship becomes normal. Discipline stops being something you do and becomes someone you are. Here's the truth that breaks most people. They think discipline is a bridge to an easier life. Work hard now so you can coast later. Build habits today so you can cruise on autopilot tomorrow. But that's a lie. And it's the exact lie that makes people quit when they finally realize this bridge has no end. That's exactly what happened to Gohan. One night, exhausted and frustrated, he was ready to give it all up. He asked himself the same question we've all asked at some point: when does this get easier? And then the answer hit him: it doesn't. You get stronger. That single shift changed everything. Stop asking, when will it get easier? Start asking, what's today's battle? Because that's the secret of the void ring. Discipline never becomes easy. You simply become the kind of person who does hard things. Not because they're easy, but because that's who you are. Think about Musashi. He painted every single day, not because he wanted to become a painter, but because warriors paint. He practiced calligraphy not to become a writer, but because warriors write. The activity wasn't the point. The practice itself was the point. And finally, Gohan understood. The tracking, the workouts, the early mornings, they weren't steps to something else. They were the destination. They weren't temporary tasks to check off. They were the eternal practice, the way of living that separates warriors from everyone else. The void isn't empty, it's full of acceptance. Acceptance that you'll fight laziness tomorrow. Acceptance that you'll track your time forever. Acceptance that the war against mediocrity has no finish line. But here's the paradox: when you stop wishing for an end, when you accept the eternal struggle, it no longer feels like struggle. It becomes your nature. Like breathing, you don't fight to breathe, you just breathe. And discipline, when fully embraced, becomes the same. Each ring builds upon the last. Earth shows you where you really are. Water gets you moving, adapting. Fire turns your anger into fuel. Wind keeps you humble. Void makes it permanent. And now Gohan doesn't ask about endings anymore. He doesn't say, "When will I finally arrive?" Instead, he asks, "What battle begins today? What weakness do I attack right now? What growth can I earn today?" Because in the void, you discover something beautiful. The struggle isn't the price of discipline. The struggle is the discipline. The eternal war isn't what you endure to become disciplined. It's what makes you disciplined every single day forever. And that's exactly how it should be. The rings are waiting. The question is, are you